Hello and welcome to this evening's webinar. Thank you very much for coming. Tonight we'll be talking about recruiting volunteers after COVID. I've got some very special guests this evening. I am joined by Martin and Lucy from Barrow Farm RDA. Martin became a trustee at Barrow Farm about 5 years ago. And this is his third year as chairman. He also chairs the volunteer subgroup. We also have Claire from Herefordshire RDA. Claire is the centre manager, and both of these groups have had real success in recruiting and retaining volunteers this year. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Martin and take it away.
Thank you, Faye, and good evening, everyone. Just very brief bit about Barrow Farm to put this in context. We've been in operation now for just over 40 years and we require around a pool of around 100 volunteers at any one time to support 130 weekly participants. So recruitment's a big thing for us, and we like to couple it with retention, which we see as being equally important. And we've tried various things over the years, I should say. We've advertised in local papers and equestrian magazines. We've attended volunteer day events organised by the local council, where we've had stalls in the high street looking to attract volunteers. And we have also attended Freshers' Days at our local agricultural college. And these have all met with some limited success, but the three key areas that we found good for recruitment are, firstly, we support the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, and we've currently got 14 volunteers through that, and we also have a waiting list. And whilst they're only with us for a 3-month period while they do their service for their Duke of Edinburgh award, a number of them do really settle in and enjoy it and become regular volunteers with us. So it's a good source, but it's quite a bit of effort in terms of the initial training of them, but we do find that rewarding. And a large proportion of our volunteers actually come through recommendations from participants, volunteers, staff and trustees. We see that as key. I was talking to one lady this week who joined us 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I said, how did you find out about Barrow Farm? And she said, oh, well, a friend of mine and her son, they've been volunteering for some time at Barrow Farm, and I've just retired, and I like the outdoor life, I like horses, and I'd always thought it would be something nice to get involved with. And so she came along, and now she's a regular volunteer and thoroughly enjoying it. The third area is retention of volunteers, and we were very conscious through lockdown. We saw that as one of our high risks, losing volunteers through the pandemic. People not comfortable coming back. A lot of our volunteers are quite elderly, some of them are in the vulnerable category as well. So we did a few things. We always have a newsletter that goes out 3 or 4 times a year, but we put out some extra newsletters specifically for the volunteers to let them know what was going on at Barrow Farm, what we were doing, how we were managing through the pandemic, and when we were starting to bring people back, etc., which we couldn't bring volunteers back initially, and explaining all that to them. And we did. The trustees made sure that we made contact at least once with all the volunteers just to see how they were doing and to talk, and see how they felt about coming back, so that we could build up a profile of who was coming back and who wasn't. And the other thing we found was that we were still getting a number of enquiries for people wanting to volunteer. So we were explaining to them that we couldn't take volunteers at the moment, but would they like to go on a waiting list? Which we did, and then we kept in regular contact with them so that when we were looking for volunteers, we could approach them. So we see those as really key areas in terms of both new recruits and retaining existing volunteers. And we did lose a number through COVID in terms of not coming back, but we have managed to replace them with new recruits. And part of that, we see the communication with the newsletter. We've also recently set up a WhatsApp group for the volunteers so that we can keep them informed of what's happening there, because they might only come once a week for their particular ride, but I think it's important to engage with them as to what we're doing in Barrow Farm as a whole, and that gets them more interested in what's happening. As I say, we've got the volunteer subgroup, which I chair, which has another trustee on. Lucy's on as a staff member, and then we have 4 or 5 volunteers, and that group is really about making sure we're looking after our volunteers, that we're putting everything in place for them to enjoy their volunteering as much as is possible, and hopefully through that they tell their friends about how much they're enjoying volunteering at Barrow Farm. And we do regular feedback sessions to see what other things we can do better, other things they'd like us to do differently, and what do they like about volunteering. And we get lots of comments like, it's good for our mental and physical well-being, it gives us a sense of purpose and achievement, it allows us to learn new skills and help people and develop new friendships. And all those are really very positive statements, which hopefully they share with their friends, and then their friends want to come. And the next step then is, once we've got someone interested and they pick up the phone and say, oh, I quite like the idea of volunteering, how do we actually convert that from somebody been interested to actually becoming a regular volunteer? And I'm going to hand over to Lucy now, our administrator, and we've been talking quite a bit through lockdown about how we improve that process, and Lucy's had some good ideas, and we've sort of put more of a structure around that now. And so I'm going to ask Lucy to talk us through that, if you will, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. When we get our initial inquiries, they either come through our Facebook page, on the telephone, or by email. Occasionally someone will pop in. I always make sure whatever way the inquiries come in, that I always respond to them as soon as I can. I aim to do that within sort of 1 to 2 days, to really engage with people while they're really enthusiastic about wanting to come. I issue the paperwork immediately by email. We send a pack to them, which has the welcome letter and all the forms and other information that they need. After that, we arrange a visit with one of our long-term volunteers. She's been volunteering for about 23 years, and she meets them at Barrow Farm and takes them around. She gives them a tour, tells them about the history of it, lets them meet the ponies, and people really seem to enjoy that, to get a really good look around and a feel for the place before they decide to go ahead. Then they'll come and meet me in the office, and I'll talk to them about volunteering roles and the sort of days and times that we need volunteers, and make sure that they're available. After that, I process their paperwork as quickly as possible, get their green card started, and we normally aim to get them to come in for their first volunteering session within a week if possible. Most people are really keen to start straight away. So that's what we do in terms of that. We run several training sessions. We had some refresher training in the summer for the people that had come back after the COVID lockdown. We ran 4 different sessions, 4 refresher training for existing volunteers, but we also put some new volunteers in there so people could all get to know each other. In October, we ran an additional 3 training sessions for new volunteers as well. We always ask them for feedback, and we use that to plan our next session, so we can see where they feel they would like some additional training. The next steps for us is to develop our volunteering roles a little bit more, to give people the option of different things rather than just working on a ride as a leader or a sidewalker. We've started doing tea with a pony, so that gives some of our volunteers that perhaps can't get involved in the rides, that gives them a really good role, which everybody is really enjoying doing that. We also have volunteering opportunities with fundraising. gardening and maintenance, cabbage driving, and something we're looking at introducing soon will be some theory sessions as well. So yeah, all of that is sort of in progress of getting those written up properly, and then we can advertise them as and when we need to. And I'll hand back to you now, Faye. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that, both Martin and Lucy. That was really interesting. I'm now going to hand over to Claire from Herefordshire RDA.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Faye for inviting me to join the discussion today. And I think listening to both Martin and Lucy, I am going to probably discuss a few things and cover a few things that they have also. But first of all, I thought I'd just give you a bit of a backstory about Herefordshire RDA and what we had going on with volunteers pre-pandemic. So before the pandemic, we had riding sessions of around 150 riders per week, and we required around 35 to 40 volunteers each week to come in and help support the sessions. And we found that it was a struggle and we couldn't recruit volunteers. We were probably getting 1 or 2 applications per month. And when they did come in and see the centre and view what we were doing, they'd come in perhaps for 1 shift and then we wouldn't see them again. So we were a little bit concerned over our processes and what we were doing just before COVID. And then COVID happened. So we all, as we know, had to go to a stop. So we decided to have a look at our processes and look at what we were doing and how we did it. So if we fast forward to now, we now have a healthy number of volunteers. We're really fortunate. We've got 50 in total, and they are all different. So they all come from different walks of life. Some of them have lots of experience with horses. Others have had no experience with horses and have relied on us to train them. But they're all fantastic and they're all really, really willing to help and learn, which is what you need. And then so, as I say, it's a case of we've gone forwards through the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we weren't getting many applications at all. And I can't really pinpoint the actual reason to our success, but I am able to tell you how we deal with our volunteer recruitment processes, and that may be a help and interest. So the first thing that we sort of looked at was our activity on social media. We have got active Twitter accounts, Facebook and LinkedIn. We tend to use the LinkedIn as more of a corporate than and go through companies. But again, that can be a really good way of linking up with companies who might want to come in and visit for the day. And there may be people there who are interested in then to volunteer their time. And with Facebook, we have vamped up the amounts of posts that we do, and we've made it so that we have interesting posts, engaging posts. We tend to discuss the horses, we post what we're doing, what we plan to do. We try and engage in the community posts as well. So not only do we share what we're doing, we share what other charities are doing within our community, because we're hoping if we can engage more people in our posts, we'll have more interest and people will start to ask whether, you know, they need volunteers. And with what has happened, it does actually seem to be working. So that's what we've been doing on our social media. Now, we've then also looked at volunteer applications and how often we get them and how we're dealing with them. And so we're really pleased with the amount of applications that we're now getting. We're getting between 1 or 2 a week, which is, I can't tell you how amazing that is to actually get people coming through and saying that they want to come and volunteer for us, from previous where we were only getting 1 or 2 a month. So what we've done with our processes is we've vamped up the amount of training that we do for our current volunteers as well. So we are making sure that we go through mounting training, and that we go through lead training and all different manners of training. We even get them involved with working the horses each day. So we'll get them to lunge them. We'll make sure that they're happy with handling them. If there's something that's not quite going right with the horses, we'll coach them through it and discuss how we can make it easier for them so that they get a better handle on how to handle the horses, which really seems to inspire them and make them feel like they're a valid member of the team, and also gives them really good self-esteem. So we're really trying to make sure that we communicate with the volunteers and that we are there to support and help them as much as possible. We're also doing newsletters to keep them up to date with what's happening at the centre, a bit like what Martin and Louise were saying. So keeping their interest so they know what's happening at the centre, and also updating them with emails as well, with if we've got slots on our rota, or if we've got up and coming events that might be interest to them. And we also do coffee mornings as well. We try and do the coffee mornings every 3 or 4 months. And not only do we say to the current volunteers come, but if you've got anyone that you think's interested in coming to volunteer with us, we ask those guys to come in as well, so they can discuss what we do and see what the centre's like. Over COVID, as we sort of went through the pandemic, as I said, we decided that our systems weren't quite working and volunteers weren't able to get in touch with us as freely as we liked. So we looked at getting a volunteer booking system. So we now use 3 rings, and it allows the volunteers to log on and look at what's happening for the next sort of 6 weeks, and then they can book onto slots over that time period, and they can do as many slots as they want. They can do any slots they like. The only thing that we request is if they do decide to cancel, that they give us about 24 hours notice. But to be honest, most volunteers don't. It works really well, and you can plan ahead. It just makes life really easy. So that's a fantastic tool to use, and the volunteers' feedback has been very positive. They really like being able to see what's going on, and the planning ahead is just brilliant for them. And then with the actual recruitment process of the volunteers, we recently made some changes to make sure that we sped up their when inviting them in. Again, a little bit like Lucy was saying, you know, you've got to strike while the iron's hot, and if you leave it, people just start to think, well, do they really need volunteers? So the first thing that we did was, as soon as we get those applications through, we email them or we phone them and say, look, would you like to come in for a meet the team and a tour of the centre? Most people say yes. So within a week, we try and get that going. Once they've come in and met the team, and we say to them, you know, there's no sort of pretense to actually come in and volunteer, but if you'd like to, please let you know, do you want to? And usually most people are there and then say, yeah, definitely, this is what we want to do. So as soon as they've left the centre, we'll email their references, and we've got a lovely link that we use on Microsoft, which is Microsoft Forms, and you literally send that to the references, they send them back, and within sort of 5-10 minutes you've usually got them completed and done. So that saves a lot of time. And then I send them an email to welcome them to the centre, which has all of our policies and processes, and we also email their DBS checks. over to them, and then on their first day when they sign up, I just say to them, please bring your documents over, and we'll check them, and it saves a lot of time. And they used to take about 15-20 minutes each one. I now can check the documents in 5 minutes, and they're done, dusted for 3 years, and happy days. And the volunteers quite like it as well, because they don't have to stand around and wait for me and answer with questions about where they've been living for the last 5 years. So that's always a happy compromise for them. So I think I've covered everything. Sorry, I get a bit nervous and dash through it all. But in conclusion, I would say that since COVID, there's been a lot of change. We are in a really fortunate situation, and the uptake of volunteers is amazing. But we have made changes to what we do, and I think it's just so important to make sure that when recruiting volunteers, you make sure that you keep your current volunteers happy and engaged, and make sure that they do feel like they're a valid part of the team. And anyone coming into the volunteering system, they have a very short process on getting them through the door, and then they're welcomed with open arms. But I wish everyone the best with their volunteering. And if you have any questions or anything, then please do email us at Hereford. We're happy to help. And thank you. And I'll pass you back to Faye.
Amazing. Thank you, Claire. That was absolutely brilliant. I've had a quick question in the Q&A, and it's just called, what was the name of the booking system again?
It's 3 Rings. It's 3rings.com.
Perfect. I'm sure that will help. And just another one. Have you had success with recruiting volunteers to your trustee boards? So I know David from Herefordshire RDA, we've done some work with him, and he said you've had some great success with trustees.
Yeah, we did. We went through a few different avenues for advertising. So we used HVOS, and we also used our website as well. And we've managed to recruit 2 new trustees from different backgrounds. So one is social media, and she's PR, and the other one is business management and people management. And we managed to secure to get them to come and volunteer for us over COVID. So yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. Well done. How did you attract the non-horsey people? Anything you did in particular, or is it just?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think our posts are quite engaging with the horses on our Facebook, and we try and make it look as well, it is fun, but make it as accessible as possible. So I think a lot of people have seen what they've done on Facebook, and I thought, oh, actually that looks like fun, I'll have a go. And when they've said, oh, I have no experience, I haven't gone, oh, that might be a bit tricky. I've just gone, come have a look, meet the ponies, make sure you feel confident, and then we'll see how you get on, and we'll give you full training. And I think that's you can see the relief in their faces when you say, oh, I'm going to train you, don't worry, you'll be okay.
Amazing. I can see you nodding along there, Martin.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you have anything to, you look like you were going to say something then?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Claire said there, really. Our treasurer, we recruited 4 or 5 years ago through an external agency, and that's worked out very well for us. We haven't done much trustee recruitment recently, but yeah, we have used agencies in the past successfully, and we've also used word of mouth quite successfully as well. So yeah,
brilliant, thank you. Yeah, talking of external agencies, a really good one are county volunteer support action groups. So these are generally free to use. Some have a small fee, but they are local volunteer sort of agencies where people within the county can ask if there are local volunteering opportunities. So if you were looking for volunteers or trustees, if you Google your local county volunteer group, they will come up, and I've heard of a lot of groups have had quite a lot of success with those. Other than that, if there are any other questions, if you'd like to pop them in the Q&A box, and we can try and answer those for you. Just a couple of things to add that I've thought of whilst Claire, Martin and Lucy are talking are just to look for volunteers that give them volunteer opportunities to their strengths. So if you've got someone who's great with social media, they can volunteer by doing the social media for you and supporting with that. Just because they're not horsey doesn't mean that they can't volunteer. See if you can find things that, you know, like the spark, get them going, because actually if they enjoy it, they'll want to keep doing it. And that can particularly help with people who want to volunteer but aren't necessarily available during your session times. So people who work full time and can't volunteer during the week, actually remote volunteering could be a really good option for them. Right, it's looking like we haven't had any questions through. As always, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me at fmckenning@rda.org.uk. I can also be found on my RDA under Meet the Team, because I'm aware the spelling on my surname is quite tricky. So I am on there if you would like to email me a question, we can get back to you with that one. But other than that, thank you very much everyone for coming. Thank you Claire, Martin and Lucy for your time this evening and giving us all your helpful hints and tips. I'm sure they're very much appreciated, and hopefully see you all soon. Thank you.